If you've been enjoying this podcast over weeks or months or even years, I'd be so grateful if you could please leave us a 5-star review so others can hear about the show. Thanks so much. Welcome to Grow, Cook, Eat, Arrange, the podcast of me, Sarah Raven, and a lovely selection of different guests. Today, I am joined again by our returning guest, Josie Lewis, who is the head gardener here at Perch Hill. And the reason that I've asked her to come on this one is that we share a sort of vague background in science. And Josie, before she became a gardener, was, this is quite a mouthful, a veterinary pharmacokinetic person, pharmacologist. So she, like me, is quite interested in the sort of research part of what we do in horticulture and trying to push the boundaries forward on things. And one of the things that we have a joint passion for are dahlias. And the thing about dahlias is that they are the most floriferous plant that you can possibly grow. I've banged on about this quite enough in that if you plant a metre of peonies, you get a third of a bucket of cut flowers. If you plant a metre of dahlias, you get 30 to 50 buckets of cut flowers. But it's not just that, there's just the most incredible range. And it's the range we're going to talk about because Josie and I, but really led by Josie, are planning a whole dahlia breeding programme here at Perch Hill. Welcome, Josie.
Thank you very much. Nice to be back again.
Good. And the thing that we're going to just try and explain is one, I guess, why we're interested, but perhaps that's obvious, but also how you actually do it. And we've sort of skirted over this a little bit in the past, but I really wanted to go into a bit more detail for those of you who are interested in it, because it is such an area of excitement at the moment. And both here in the Netherlands, in Holland, in America, and interestingly, New Zealand, actually, there are huge breeding programs going on with the dahlia family at the moment. And so that's what we're going to discuss, a sort of background to that. We're spurred into doing it today because Josie did a little bit of breeding last year, which she's going to explain to us. And actually, she came in a couple of days ago to say that some of her seed that she harvested from her cross-fertilization process have germinated. And so that is super, super exciting. So, Josie, will you just explain exactly what you did? And then I'll kind of take it through to the end point of breeding it out, etc.
Okay, so if we go right back to the beginning, seeds, as we know, is a complete game of chance. So you either get lucky or you don't. So going even further back than my research days, back to A-level biology, I'm sure we'll all remember this. So any plant's objective in life is to reproduce itself. So the original dahlias in Central America, where they came from, they were single-flowered, open, single-flowered, not very impressive, but the insects had perfect access to them, and that's what they're there for. They want to reproduce themselves. So these traits are always going to be dominant. So you're always going to get single-flowered and, the open single flowers. And it wasn't until breeders started, beginning of the 19th century, I would think, a long time ago, they started selective breeding. And some of these recessive traits of the double petals
so they would have a throwback occasionally
yes, exactly.
to a double.
Yes.
And so they started selecting out those doubles.
Exactly. And then breeding those together. And then, so as they look more and more into the genetics of dahlias, because it threw up so many different combinations of things, that all the colours kept coming out and different forms kept appearing. And most plants and humans, we have 2 sets of chromosomes, so we're diploids. But dahlias, they think, are octoploids, so they have 8 sets of chromosomes.
Wow.
And there is some debate on this. Some think they might be tetraploids, having 4 sets. But if we go with the thought that they've got 8 sets, so there's sort of an infinite ability to produce different forms and different colours. No blue gene, so you'll never get a blue dahlia.
That's true,
They
isn't it?
haven't found that, yeah. So like you say, in America, they're doing a lot of breeding, and they're trying to map the genome to see exactly what's there, which would make our breeding so much easier. But of course, there's so much information there. It's not an easy thing to do. The other thing that dahlias have is transposons. So this is getting a bit sciencey, isn't it?
That is very sciencey, Josie.
Sorry.
Explain to the layman what...
It's a little genetic element, and it can cut and paste itself. So in modern technology terms, it can cut it and paste itself onto a new place in the DNA sequence. So even though you may have you think you've got a stable plant, it can move this bit of DNA, and you'll get all sorts of different colours and even more variables, basically.
Can I just stop you for a minute there?
Yeah, of course.
So would that explain, like, I remember we've had some varieties which are normally double, and then suddenly we get a single on that.
Yes.
And I'm trying to think of one of the cactus.
It was Mango Madness, wasn't it? It throws out all sorts of flowers.
So that would explain that, would it?
I would think that's one of the reasons it does that. It's not that we're sending out the odd tubers. It's just something the dahlia does because they're so unstable. There's so much, because they're octoploids, it's
that's
really
so interesting.
Tricky.
Okay.
And of course, the other thing you can get is sports. So you'll have, a normal coloured dahlia, and it'll send, say, a red dahlia, and it'll send off an orange branch.
Yes.
A flowered branch. So that's a sport. And you can take cuttings from that.
Yes.
And then you could grow that on. And it might always be stable as the orange, but then you have to grow it on for 2 or 3 years to
check it's stable.
Yes, yeah.
So again, we have that with autumn orange.
That's it, yes.
Yeah, autumn orange is basically the most beautiful one, which is sort of red and yellow together, which make orange, but kind of stippled. And then sometimes you just get one that is very, very orange, and sometimes one that's very, very red or whatever.
Yes,
it really does vary on one plant.
That's it, yes, which makes an overall beautiful effect. But yes, it is
okay, that's so interesting. So what did you do to get the seed that's now germinating in the polytunnel?
So, we started too late last season, so it's not a good example, really. I chose 2 dahlias that we'd like to cross. We'll go through perhaps in a minute what your ideal would be. So, I've chosen 2 parents, which I think might cross. And then you put, when the bud's still tight, you put an organza, those jewellery organza bags with the drawstrings. So put one of those over the bud, pull the drawstring tight, and you wait for the dahlia to open.
So that stops the bees getting in
That's
and
it.
pollinating it.
Yeah. So once it's open enough, there's a lot more detail online on how to do this. I won't go into all that now.
Okay.
But once the pollen appears, and then with your other parent, so you've got A and B, so you go to parent B and take the pollen from that. What I did was take the whole flower and just tap it onto parent A. People say you have to do it 3 days in a row, and you can do it with a paintbrush then to transfer it. But I was much more Heath Robinson and just took the whole flower and put it on.
And you're looking for the stigma there. So you've got the pollen, which is the male sex cell of one, and the stigma, which is above the female sex cell of the other, let's say.
Yes.
And so you need to make sure. Now, the thing that I don't understand is with a double variety, let's say Rip City, for instance, you don't see a stigma. So how do you do that?
If you leave them long enough, that it'll eventually open out.
Okay.
And you can take the petals off. It doesn't. You can take half the petals off the flower at first, and then that'll expose the centre.
Okay.
So you can expose. They'll all have that centre, but it'll be hidden away in some cases.
So even the highly bred varieties will still have...
They should have a centre.
The centre,
yes.
okay. The
because
stigma.
what they want to do is reproduce themselves, so they'll always have.
Yeah.
But of course, you get ones that are good seed setters, some aren't at all.
Right.
And that's what you're looking for, really. So once you've got a good seed parent, you can use that one to breed lots of other things with.
And so do you then put the organza bag around
Yes.
once you've done the pollination?
That's right. So you've done your pollination, the bag goes back on, because a bee could visit with random pollen. So the bag goes back on, and then you let it mature, and you can pull all the petals off then, so they don't get soggy. You really want it to be dry weather, because the pollen isn't viable once it gets wet, and you don't want the seed head getting soggy either. And then about 6 weeks or so until the seed matures, and once it starts to get that little brown, it starts to get a little bit crispy, let's call it, but it's not crisp.
Yeah.
And then you can pick them and then store them cool. I'd take them out of the seed head, and I just stored them in the organza bag somewhere cool over winter. And you can go through them in autumn when you pick them, but I went through them in spring, taking off all the chaff, so all the papery bit. And you're looking for quite a thick black seed. Again, if you have a look online, they'll show you all the different viable seed and non-viable seed, so you're not wasting your time.
And they're quite substantial dahlia seeds, aren't they?
They are, yes. You can pick them up easily. You don't need tweezers or anything. And then, come mid-March probably, we sowed them. And yes, some of them have sprouted and are growing. But of course, if you're an actual dahlia breeder, I mean, I've got to mention Christine Albrecht from Santa Cruz Dahlias in America. I mean, if you want helpful guidance, she is amazing. She has really interesting work she's doing on it.
And she's done a book, hasn't she?
She's done a book.
We'll put the reference to that in the podcast notes.
Yeah. She's really worth having a look at. She'll have thousands of seeds.
Wow.
It's just huge what the dahlia breeders like her are actually doing. What we're doing is just very small comparatively. Well, so far.
Yeah.
And then you plant out all your seedlings, have a look at them in the first year. Obviously, when the frosts have gone, like you would your normal dahlias, you plant out your seedlings.
Yeah.
Have a look at them. And, they'll be quite ruthless. So when they come up and the flower's wrong, they'll rip the dahlia out straight away, because they say, they've got thousands. They can't keep every plant. But if you're just doing a bit of home breeding...
How rewarding is that?
Yeah, it might be something you love.
Yeah.
It could be, that you could strike lucky on the first cross.
Yeah. Well, I just want to butt in there because, we'll come back to Josie, but this is where I've got involved in the past, is I then go and visit dahlia breeders and walk through their fields.
That's the stage they're at.
Yeah.
Yes.
And their field 1, normally they may have 1,000, 2,000, where each plant is an individual. So they're completely unique.
Yeah.
But they may have 1,000, 2,000. And then you go into field 2, and they've already selected a few from field 1 the previous year and grown them on to see if they're good tuber formers. And then you go into field 3, and they've got them where they've got a block of maybe 20 where they've taken cuttings and divided the tubers. So they're beginning to bulk them up.
Yeah.
And so we were in Holland last August, and we're going again this August, and Josie's coming with me. And so we have made a selection from field 1, which will now hopefully be in field 2, but we also made some selections from field 3, which is going to be new varieties, which are going to be in spring 24, which are Adam's choice, because Adam, my husband, came with me at that time, and also Skipper's choice, which is named after our friend Dickie. But so back to you, but that, it's just like that is then how it gets out to the customer, isn't it? So the breeder then decides, selects.
Yes, so from Shipper's Choice that you brought back, so I did get some seed from that. So even now we can be breeding from a new dahlia.
Oh, wow, that's incredible.
So it's interesting to see what will come out of that.
So that would be completely random because we don't know. It might have got fertilised in Holland because I brought back a plant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it could have been anywhere. And it was sitting next to Adam's choice when it came here. So
exciting.
That would be a nice, interesting
Dickie
cross.
meet Adam.
Yes. Don't know what we'd call that one. So if you've got your plant and you're happy with it, so perhaps we could talk about what you'd look for in an ideal plant. So it would be colour. So your choice would be?
I really like those sort of coppery, mahogany, rich, sort of slightly variable. I mean, that's what Adam's choice is. Or I like sort of burnt orange, kind of creme brulee colours with toffee and sort of cream. But then Skipper's Bronze is that really.
Yes,
But I also like, I do like the ones for pollinators, but I also do, of course, love cut flowers. So one of the things that I'm really interested in working on breeding is ones that have an extended vase life, because one of the things we're trying to do is really develop cut flowers that really last in the vase. And of course, dahlias are utterly, utterly wonderful in all ways. But unfortunately, like sweet peas, I couldn't claim they have good vase lives. But we have worked with breeders to develop 2, Molly Raven and Perch Hill, which seem to have a uncharacteristically long vase life. So for me, vase life would be important too.
Yes.
But what about you, Josie?
Well, we'll probably differ on this one, leaf colour.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not keen on the darker leaves.
I'm not sure I am, actually. They make it quite a contrasty thing, don't they?
That's right. It has to be specific colours, I think, with the dark leaves.
Yeah.
I like blackjack works, but that's one of the few. And also the form of the leaf. You know, some leaves are sort of quite ugly.
Yeah.
Whereas some are really beautifully cut. You know, if you think of Dahlia murkii, which is species, I know, but beautiful foliage.
Beautiful foliage, yeah. Whereas the ever-popular Café au lait, it has such coarse, boring leaves, doesn't it?
Ugly leaves. Yeah. And then the form of the dahlia, you know, water lilies, like you've said, singles you like. I'm quite fond of the pom-poms and the balls because they're so contrast with other things, don't
I agree.
they?
I'm really, more and more, I'm getting really keen on those. When we were at the trial in Holland last year, I fell on Vino, which actually is one I've grown here in the past, which is a sort of rich crimson. And it literally looks like a drumstick end, you know. I mean, they are called drumstick dahlias, but I agree. I love that in contrast to the sort of blousiness of the others. I really like those.
Yeah, they do have their place. And then the height we'd be looking for, we're breeding for pots or, like you say, for cut flowers. So if it's cut flowers, you want long, strong stems. Yeah. And a lot of them come out with quite weak stems. Yeah. So you obviously wouldn't choose those.
Lou Farman's got particularly long stems, actually.
Really
and actually
nice.
Sarah Raven's is pretty good too.
Yes.
So which are the two that you know you've got seedlings germinating in the tunnel now? What were the two parents?
So I crossed quite a lot of the ones I did with Hermione because that's the shorter, because it's looking for something to go in a pot.
Ah, yes.
So I think it's Shipper's Bronze with Hermione and possibly Lou Farman with Hermione as well.
Describe Hermione to everyone.
It was, what do we say, 50 centimetres probably, pinky. We all liked it. I'm trying to think what it's like compared to what people would know. So it
brand new.
Yeah, new, lots of shades of pink in it and a decorative. So
very nice.
So yeah, because it was so prolific, I'm hoping that something will come out of that. Yeah.
But I mean, like we've bred one Skipper's Bronze, which we've talked about quite a bit now, but unfortunately that is a really bad tuber former.
Yes.
So the only way we can keep growing that is from micropropagation, which makes it more expensive, which is a real shame. But it's such a unique variety, and it literally does look like creme brulee. It's like the burnt sugar on the top and the custard, soft sort of custard colour underneath. And it's that mix of bronze and very pale yellow into ochre, which is so stunning, I think.
Yes, yeah. It's a shame it doesn't form good tubers, and of course that's the other thing you're breeding for. You know, once you've got all this came together on a plant, you then grow it on, see what the tubers are like. Yeah, and if they're feeble and hopeless, you're not going to pursue it. You know, it's not commercially viable. It's absolutely fine in your garden for a home breeder, but you know, for us, it's a different story, isn't it? Yeah, and also you're looking for good seed setters. Yeah. So you know you can breed from that. Reliably. Yes, yeah. And vigorous plants, obviously, is the other thing. You don't want some feeble
so it's quite a demand, isn't it?
It's quite a list, isn't it?
To get a cracking plant.
Yes, yeah, there is quite a lot. And then the other thing is, you know, do you want early or late blooming. You're like totally tangerine, always the first out.
Absolutely. Whereas blackjack is always the last.
Late. Yeah, exactly. So if it's something that you're specifically growing for, then that's what you've got to aim for as well.
Okay, well, so lots to think about there. I hope that's sort of thought-provoking for you all. And I guess Josie and I would really like to encourage you as we move into summer with your dahlias coming into flower to really think about maybe do a bit of home breeding. And we're certainly going to try, and we're working with a home breeder in the UK at the moment to do quite a new exciting range of what's called collarette dahlias, which are the ones that are single, but they have an extra collar in the centre of the flower of mini petaloids. So there's lots going to be going on here. And what I would say to you all is come and see the dahlias and the dahlia trial and even the dahlias that Josie has grown from seed this August, September, when we're open, when the dahlias are at their peak. So thank you, Josie. Anything else you want to part with on that?
Just keep buying dahlias, keep growing dahlias. They're fabulous.
They're fabulous. They are. Thanks so much for listening to Grow Cook Eat Arrange. It was lovely talking to Josie about dahlia breeding, which is something that as we get into our dotage, we want to do more and more and more of. It's really exciting. And Josie's actually coming with me to Holland in early autumn for us to visit breeders and chat about breeding more and more. And next week, I'm joined by somebody who I've recently met, who I'm incredibly inspired by, Olia Hercules, who is a chef and cookery writer from Ukraine. She's cooked in Italy, she's cooked back here in the UK, and she's a wonderful cook and really fantastic cookery book writer. And I couldn't more recommend her recipes and her books. Anyway, it's going to be wonderful talking to her next week at such a difficult time for anyone born and brought up in Ukraine. You can find more information, photos and advice sheets on all the plants and recipes we talk about on this podcast by heading to the show notes or at sarahraven.com/podcast.